Mattathios awoke in a burst of consciousness, covered in sweat and ready to continue the fight. As he leapt to his feet, he felt his head whirl and his legs gave out from underneath him as he crashed back down to the ground. He quickly recovered into a low squat position, with one hand on the ground and his heels raised, ready to react, but recovering. I love thee, my fate. With courage I may endure, with wisdom I shall adapt, with time I serve. Mattathios uttered the litany of faith to regain composure. As he spoke the words, he took in his surroundings with his keen senses, physical and magical. He was in a small room with wooden walls and an opening in a much larger space that appeared to be a storehouse below ground. There were crates stacked up in rows, large sealed clay pots, and wooden casks filling most of the space. His keen ears heard a few mice scurrying about, but nothing bigger, and no signs of magic either. He looked about his feet and saw a bed with a stand next to it with water and a candle. He also saw that his sword was sheathed just right under the right side of the bed. Mattathios realized someone had helped him, tucked him away here for safety. With this, he relaxed, drained the jug of water, and sat on the bed to meditate and regain strength. After a few minutes, Mattathios heard a key unlocking the door above. As he heard footsteps coming down the stairs to the door of his room, he grabbed his sword and nimbly made his way behind some crates. He knew someone had saved him, but that didn't mean the same person was the one coming now. Mattathios timed it so that the metallic clinking of the door unlocking masked the sound of his pulling his blade an inch loose of its scabbard, ready to be drawn quickly and silently. He picked a dark spot with a good vantage point of the door and took a deep breath in as the door creaked open. A sturdy-looking human, tall for his race at about 5'8", stepped into the room carrying a plate of bread and pickled vegetables. The man was well built, with shoulder-length black hair pleated over one shoulder and a thick but short beard. He wore a grass-green short-sleeved long tunic that went down to his knees on top of a white undergarment. The tunic was finely made, with symbols embroidered around the neck and sleeve ends. It was in good condition, but heavily used. He also wore baggy brown trousers that were mostly covered by the tunic, and his lower legs were wrapped with undyed fabric. Mattathios sensed no ill intent from the stranger and saw only a dagger at his waist. He could sense the man's heart rate was not elevated, and he had no thoughts of hatred at this time. There was a light presence of some magic around him, though, but it was dull and seemed to come from a source other than the human. Mattathios gazed in silence as the man made his way to the bed in the small room. He saw the man stop at the entrance to the small room, and he appeared shocked as he realized the bed was empty. So the man disappeared into the tiny room, and Mattathios could hear him setting down the plate of food that he carried. Mattathios sheathed and set down his blade and strode to the doorway. "Thank you for saving me, good man," he said as he came to the doorway. The man inside quickly spun and put a hand on the hilt of his dagger, looking wide-eyed at the night elf before him. "Peace be with you, friend. I am Mattathios. What is your name?" Mattathios said with a jolly tone, and his right hand held up, palm out, showing that he held no weapon. The man took a small step back and stood up tall, removing his hand from his dagger. He took a second to steady himself and find his voice. "I am Elvig," he said. "Few can sneak up on me, and I expected you still abed." Mattathios smiled and waved his hand down a length of the body in a graceful sweeping motion. "It appears I am much recovered, thanks to your fine aid. Sorry for sneaking up on you. We Lunavite are known for our stealth." He then motioned to the bed and said, "Would my savior have a moment to sit and chat?" Elvig stared at him with suspicion for a second, but took a step back, motioned to the bed and said, "I was more your pack mule than your savior, but it seems we're both filled with questions." With that, Mattathios took a seat on the bed and picked up the bread from the plate at the side table. It was hard and stale, but he was glad to have the sustenance. He savored the mouthful for a time before returning his gaze to Elvig, who was leaning against the nearby wall with his legs crossed. As you say, I have many questions, but I believe my heroic pack mule has earned the right to ask first. Elvig stared at Mattathios for a good few seconds, seemingly pondering how best to word an uncomfortable quandary. Finally, the man stood up straight, looked the elf dead in the eyes, and said, I'm not sure why I saved you, nor if it was a good decision. I know you're a night elf, a demon sent from the depths of the abyss. But you did not perish under the rays of Sol Invicta, and I saw your excuse me. I saw your wounds being healed with holy light. What are you, and how do I know that you're not a threat? Mattathios smirked. He liked the boldness of this human. Calmly and gracefully, he lowered himself onto the floor, seated himself with his legs crossed and his hands resting on his knees, palms up. It seems my people's good reputation precedes me. I feel I will win little trust with words. Thankfully, we Magistrati prefer to communicate through action. He then motioned to the floor in front of him and said, Will you allow me to demonstrate? Eovig looked at him incredulously. I name you and your race demons, and all you can do is smirk and ask me to sit with you? I think I shall keep my feet and my distance for now. He put his hand back onto the hilt of his dagger and leaned in just slightly. You call yourself a magistrati? Or some such? What is that? Some type of foul magician? My, full of mistrust, aren't we? Mattathios chuckled. He then closed his eyes and uttered a line from the litanies of faith. By order we support, by chaos we create, for harmony we strive. As he said the words, his upturned palms gathered energy. In his right hand, an orb of shimmering golden light pulsated calmly. In his left hand, a deep purple mist swirled discordantly. Temperance keeps the vessel pure, and justice guides the way. With this line, Mattathios slowly brought both hands together. As the two forms of energy neared each other, they began to meld, each striving to match the other's rhythm and form. Through courageous action and wise thought, we cultivate balance. After these words, Mattathios' hands touched, and the room went dark and still. He then pulled them apart an inch, and a burst of light and sound filled the room. In the first second, the room is awash with every shade of color and every vibrational tone. Then, between his hands, the unified energy is stable. It shifts and swirls continuously, seemingly pulsing to an ever-changing beat. Its form flows freely between a sphere and a pyramid, and from solid matter to transparent ether. So eternally defend those in need, liberate the oppressed, and adore freedom. As he finished the litany, Mattathios raised his hands above his head and let the energy dissipate harmlessly. Eilvig stared in astonishment for a few heartbeats. He had seen the elven lords use devastating battlefield magics and see their paladins fully heal grotesque and otherwise fatal wounds. But he had never seen anything quite like this. Not only was this display a spectacle for the senses, but for the emotions as well. The energies seemed to bring out emotions and feelings within him with each pulse. He had felt the rush of his first hunt, the deep loss of his mother, the terror of the battlefield, the elation of his first kiss. There were also emotions he had experienced then that he had no name for, no frame of reference from which to compare. And when the energy between the elf's hands had fully coalesced and was pulsating between a sphere and a pyramid, Eilvig had felt a deep sense of belonging, like he was, just for an instant, connected to all things. Come now, brother, sit with me, as said Mattathios, as he gestured to the floor in front of him once more. Eilvig slowly stepped forward and lowered himself onto the floor, mimicking Mattathios' crossed-legged sitting posture. Trust is valuable because it's so difficult to build. I know it will take time, but I would be honored to gain your trust. Tell me, noble Elvig, now that you have had a glimpse at the powers that I serve, do you still think me a demon? Elvig lowered his eyes to the floor and sighed. Ah, nay, I think not. But I know less about you now than I did before, he said again before meeting Matatheos's gaze. There was a creature in the forest that saved me as a lad. I saw it again the day I came across you. It was hunched over you, mumbling some magic. It then spoke to me without words. It made me feel instead of hear. It told me to help you because you would help me. The human then shifted slightly in his seated position, seemingly collecting his thoughts. I knew you were no demon, or else I would never have spent all day dragging your arse here. But I need a straight answer. What are you? Matatheos regarded Elvig with warmth and placed his hand over his heart. I am Matatheos, a Magistrati of cosmic freedom. I am a new champion of the Order, tasked with roaming the land, bringing liberty and protection to those whose freedom is being oppressed, as well as silencing threats to the universal balance. Eowig furrowed his brow, seemingly trying to comprehend all that was just said. Matatheos laughed and said, It's a mouthful, I know. Put simply, I'm here to help.